All right, thank you everybody so much for joining. This is the July 30th Intermacs and PDMacs user group webinar. Thank you everybody for joining. Today on the call from STS, we have Nancy Honeycutt, Leanne Jones, and Emily Conrad. And then from the Kirklin Solutions team, the Intermacs Data Warehouse team, on the call today, we have John Pennington and Brandon Singletary. And then we have a member of our core group, Neelam Tejpal, joining us on the panel today. So thank you everybody for joining. On today's agenda, we're going to go over some STS updates, talk a little bit about AQO, and then I'm going to go through temporary devices to talk a little bit about ECMO and RVADs, and then we'll have time at the end of the call to have an open discussion. If at any point during today's webinar you have any questions or comments, please use the Q&A box for those, and we'll address all of those. So we're going to start off right off the bat with a polling question. So we're curious as to what quality improvement projects you are working on at your site using your Intermacs and PDMacs data. So maybe something you're currently working on, something you've done in the past using your Intermacs and PDMacs data. We would love to hear how you're using it. So you can just type your answer in the text box that you should see on the screen. We'll give everybody just a minute or two to do that. So while everybody is putting that text in the text box, just to give you a little bit of context about why we're asking this. So Nancy and I have been talking this year about possibly having Intermacs and PDMacs quality webinars where we could have speakers come and talk about how they use their data at their site to drive quality improvement. So we were really fortunate. We had a great talk back in February or March of this year. And it was a really well-received talk. And so we're hoping to do more of those. So we're just trying to get an idea of, what's going on out there and what quality improvement projects are being done. So just to give you a little context of why we're asking this question.
And we've had about 12 people respond.
Okay. Should we just leave it open?
Yeah, we can leave it open for a little bit, and then when it slows down, I can
close it out.
I can end it. But yeah, I'll leave it up for just a little bit longer.
Okay, perfect. Okay. And then just a couple of dates to put on the calendar. Keep in mind, we will do another Intermacs PDMacs user group call the end of August. So August 27th at 1 p.m. Central will be our next call. And then we'll have one, I think September 24th. I believe that's the day after AQO. So Nancy and I will have to talk and see if we're going to do that or if it's going to conflict with the live in-person AQO conference. So we'll talk about that and we'll make sure we update the conference. And then we will be having our quality assurance reporting webinar also in the fall. So we will make sure the website is up to date with the dates, but just keep in mind our next one will be August 27th. And then just a reminder, so for the Q2 reports, the data entry deadline is tomorrow. So any data that you want captured in that Q2 report does need to be entered by tomorrow night. And then that report will come out the end of September. So just a little reminder there. And then AQO registration is up. AQO this year for Intermacs and PDMacs will be a live virtual meeting on September 23rd. So it's going to be in a setting very similar to this where we can share screens, we can have cameras on, we can we can take you all off of mute so we can talk and have conversations. So it's going to be very interactive. Anybody who works with Intermacs or PDMacs is welcome to attend. We have a really great agenda, which I'll go through on the next slide. It will be a full day. We're going to have a new data manager webinar, new data manager session, like to kick off the meeting, where we will talk about all the new things that a data manager would need to know to get comfortable entering data into Intermacs and PDMacs. So really great agenda, great networking opportunities. It's a really great opportunity. Even if we're not in person, we're still making it so that we can all connect. So we have a great agenda. These are all the talks we're going to be having. We're going to talk about Nancy and I will be doing a talk on the new adverse events that are going to roll out in 2026 and kind of show you what those forms are going to look like. We have Rama, he's going to do a talk on the platform upgrade. So in 2026, the entire Intermacs and PDMacs platforms will be upgraded. They'll run quicker. You won't get so many generic timeout errors. So he's going to be talking about what that's going to look like. We're going to talk about Intermacs patient profiling and, how do you assign the appropriate profile and, if things change with the patient, which profile would I choose? So we have really full agenda. And then we also will be presenting the Sherry Ann Wisman Memorial Excellence Award. This is an award that's awarded at every AQO. It's been going on for several years, and it's awarded to a VAD coordinator. And so if you have a VAD coordinator who demonstrates these wonderful characteristics, loyalty, dependability, selflessness, and contributes to the VAD patients, which we know they are all doing, we would love to hear about it and award that VAD coordinator with this award. So if you have anybody you would like to nominate, the opportunity is still open to submit those nominations, and it's open until August 8th. And if you go onto the STS website, and I think if you click on for data managers, it will bring you to a page that has all the information for AQO, and you'll see the nomination form on there. So please do submit those. If you have any questions or you can't find it, you can reach out to Emily Conrad at STS, or you can reach out to Nancy or myself, and we'll help you get to where you need to be. So please do that. And then AQO, we offer, STS offers early bird pricing. So that was supposed to be only through July 16th, but STS has extended the early bird pricing. So it is still being offered. It's offered through tomorrow night, so July 31st. So if you want to attend Intermacs, you would sign up for this last option here, the virtual pass plus the Intermacs virtual platform. And so what that will get you is access to our live virtual meeting on September 23rd. You'll get all of the on-demand content for Intermacs. So some of our sessions are live, and then we do have additional talks that are called on demand, where you can just watch them at your leisure. They won't be played during the meeting. So you will get access to that. And then you also get access to the AQO content for all the other databases too. So for adult cardiac surgery, general thoracic, and congenital. Emily, anything I missed there for
Nope.
signing up for Intermacs? Okay. Okay. So yeah, so the early bird pricing will go through tomorrow, and then this page shows you what the pricing will change to after Thursday.
Right.
Okay.
Patricia, we had a question in the Q&A about AQO. So
Yeah,
I
let's
guess
talk
we can
about
go ahead
that.
and talk about that. So Ashley's asking, will there be an option later to see all of the data abstraction guidance that is discussed at AQO for those of us who cannot attend? Emily, can you take that?
Yeah, we'll post everything on the AQO Learning Center. It is for a fee, so unfortunately, we don't post AQO content outside of our platforms that are directly associated with the meeting at this time.
Okay.
Thanks, Emily.
And also, I just wanted to include, I had said that we will be showcasing and showing the new adverse event forms at AQO this year. And that is just so everybody can know and could kind of show you what is to come. But for those forms, like Nancy and I will be doing webinars as we get closer to the live of these forms, which will be, around this time next year, summer 2026. So if if that's one of the things you're really worried about, we will be, doing educational webinars for those as the time gets closer. Any other questions that were in the box, Nancy?
Nope,
Okay,
that was all.
okay.
Oops, wait, there's one more. Rosalind is asking, the standalone virtual pass is what we sign up for the AQO info access after September 23rd.
Let me go back to the screen. Yes. So, Emily, I might need to lean into you on this one. So the virtual pass will get you everything that was played at AQO, but the difference is if you sign up for the virtual pass over the virtual pass plus the virtual forum, you won't be live on the Intermacs meeting, right? For task
Correct.
questions, for
Correct.
networking, for things like that, but
Correct.
you'll just see it after the fact.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, no more questions.
Okay, so I'm going to just talk a little bit about RVADs and ECMO. Nancy and I get lots of questions in the FAQ inbox about this, and I get questions almost daily on this. So I felt like maybe this would be a good opportunity to talk about it and make sure that everybody is on the same page and understanding the way that RVADs and ECMOs should be handled in the database. So those of you that have been entering data into Intermacs for a long time, you know that, we're not an ECMO registry. So for a long time, when a device was connected to an oxygenator, it's functioning as ECMO. So we used to have you explant the device, and then once the oxygenator was removed, you would add the device back in. And this was not creating an accurate picture of what was going on with the patient. It was making the patients look like they were having more devices than they were, where in reality, it was just oxygenators being connected and disconnected. And so we changed the practice a couple years ago to once a device is functioning as an RVAD, it's entered into the database. So I'm going to go through some scenarios and kind of talk through this, and hopefully it will help to clear up any confusion. So these are the data entry guidelines. So you enter the RVAD into the database if it is not connected to an oxygenator at the time of implant. So once an RVAD is a standalone RVAD, with no oxygenator attached, it's entered into the database. If the oxygenator is added later on, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to explant it from the database. So RVAD goes in, 1 day later, oxygenator is attached. You don't need to do anything. And then you just leave it as is. And then once the RVAD is decannulated, you complete the explant form and select device type RVAD for it to be removed. So those are our coding instructions. So I'm going to go through a couple of scenarios and hopefully it will make sense. So scenario number one, a patient receives a BIVAD, so that's an LVAD and an RVAD in the same OR visit. Following implant, the RVAD was connected to an oxygenator for 5 days. The oxygenator was then turned off and the RVAD was decannulated on post-op day 10. So complete the implant form, you select BIVAD, LVAD plus RVAD. The oxygenator is turned on for 5 days, and then the oxygenator is turned off. How do I code this? So you're gonna create an event. Okay, so you're gonna enter the BIVAD via the implant form into the database. You're gonna complete the right heart failure form because the patient left the OR with an RVAD. You are going to complete the explant form on post-op day 10 for the RVAD by clicking create an event. So you didn't need to do anything when the oxygenator went on for 5 days because it was already functioning as an RVAD. And then we are interested in, after it was entered into the database, how many days was the patient on ECMO? And so then on the explant form and implant discharge form, this question is asked, and you would select 5. Scenario number 2. So post-durable LVAD implant on post-op day 3, the patient receives an RVAD device that is connected to an oxygenator, ECMO, for 5 days. On post-op day 8, the oxygenator is turned off and the device is converted to an RVAD. The oxygenator is then turned back on for 2 more days until it was turned off and the RVAD was decannulated on post-op day 14. So what's different in this scenario is the patient got their durable LVAD and then they were put on ECMO afterwards. So the RVAD is not entered into the database until the oxygenator was turned off on post-op day 8. So that's the difference here. And then the oxygenator is then turned back on after post-op day 8 for 2 more days until it was turned off on post-op day 14. So the difference here is you're waiting to add the new device until the oxygenator is turned off on post-op day 8. And then you don't need to do anything to explant it when the oxygenator goes back on. You just leave it and then complete the explant form once it was decannulated on post-op day 14. So I'll show you that. So you're going to add the LVAD implant into the database. You're going to complete your right heart failure event because the patient went on ECMO. Then on post-op day 8, when the oxygenator was turned off, you're going to click Add New Device to add that RVAD in and complete a right heart failure form. And then you're going to complete the explant form on post-op day 14 by selecting device type RVAD. Okay, we'll do another scenario. Scenario number 3. The patient receives a durable LVAD, but then needs some right heart support while still in the OR. The patient receives a percutaneous device that is connected to an oxygenator for 2 days. The RVAD device stayed in place for an additional 4 days and then was decannulated. So this patient, similar to the previous one, they got their durable LVAD, they got their HeartMate 3, and in the same OR visit, they had an RVAD put in that was connected to an oxygenator. So here you'll implant your durable RVAD, complete the right heart failure event because they went on to ECMO. You will implant the RVAD on post-op day 2 when the oxygenator was turned off, completing a right heart failure event. And then you'll complete the explant form on post-op day 6 for the RVAD being decannulated. And it never went back on an oxygenator, so there's no days of ECMO to capture. So those are our scenarios. I'll stop there. Does anybody have any questions about that?
No questions so far in the Q&A.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay,
We
please
need
go
to go
back
back.
to
Yeah.
scenario 3. Okay, so scenario 3, patient gets a durable LVAD and receives a temporary RVAD connected to an oxygenator in the same OR visit. So it would be an LVAD plus ECMO on the implant form. And then once the oxygenator on the RVAD is turned off, it's then added as a new device in the database because it's an RVAD, not ECMO. Does that make sense? Good. Hi, Christine. Yes. So actually, these are, for this webinar, I pulled older slides that I had originally put together for when these changes took place a couple years ago. So let me show you where these slides are right now. But yes, we will post this. This will all be available on the STS website after this webinar, and the slides will be there in the call. Let me just show you this real quick. So if you go to the Kirklin Solutions page, so intermacs.curso.net, and you go to Intermacs Appendices with this tab at the top, scroll all the way down to the bottom. Under Appendix S, the RVAD changes here. This is a link to these scenarios and slides. So they are there, but we always post the webinars and the slides. So those will be on the STS website. Okay. Cindy has a question. By adding RVAD several days after LVAD implant, does it give the impression that the patient went back to surgery? No, not really. I mean, yes, they did get an RVAD, but they're not always going to the OR. All right, Nancy, can we go back to scenario 1? Sure. Okay. Scenario 1, the patient receives a BIVAD. So a BIVAD is a durable LVAD and an RVAD in the same OR visit. Following implant, the RVAD was connected to an oxygenator for 5 days. The oxygenator was then turned off and the RVAD was decannulated on post-op day 10. So BIVAD went in. So you already have your RVAD entered. And then the oxygenator was turned on for 5 days. So there's nothing you need to do at that point. You just leave the RVAD in the database. And then the oxygenator was turned off and converted to an RVAD. Nothing you need to do. And then it was taken out on post-op day 10. Okay, Felicia, I have a patient recently implanted with a durable VAD. On post-op day 5, the patient received a Protect Duo with oxygenator. I'm just going to stop there real quick, Felicia. So the Protect Duo is a cannula that's used with I believe it's the Tandem Heart and the Centramag. So the Protect Duo isn't the device brand. It's the brand of a cannula that's used with one of those. So when you're implanting it in, make sure for the device type, you're choosing the appropriate device type because you won't see Protect Duo there because Protect Duo is not a RVAD device brand. At post-op day 10, the oxygenator was turned off and the Protec was used as a right-sided support for 1 day. Centramag was implanted the next day. I entered the RVAD on the day the Centramag was implanted. Was this correct? Let me see here. Yes, post-op day 10, the oxygenator was turned off in the Centramag. So yeah, so it was probably a Centramag with a Protec Duo cannula, and those would be added on post-op day 10. Yes, that's correct.
At any point would that extracorporeal, paracorporeal form come into play, like in either Felicia's example or in steps 2 and 3 of your slide?
The pump change form?
Yeah. Yeah, because I was reading the guidance text and it says, please use this for any extracorporeal, paracorporeal pump components like cannulas when they're exchanged. So like not when it's comes in or out.
So, right. So the pump change form, I think it's used more in PDMAX actually. The pump change form is for the scenario where the patient has a component of the pump that's changed out. So, and it has to be a like device. So it and it can't be done in the OR either. It has to be done like cath lab or bedside or something like that.
And I'm asking this not to confuse everyone, but because it's confusing for us sometimes too. So like, 'cause, we're talking about Protex and those are cannulas, but
Right.
that's not like a part of a Centramag that's being exchanged. That's an additional cannula that's been added, so it doesn't count for this extracorporeal form.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Patricia, you'll
Yes.
have to explain the scenario 3 again because a lot of people are going to be confused if the RVAD was implanted with the LVAD, and then you say you do not add the as a BiVAD until the oxygenator is off, right? So,
Right.
when you are adding the another device, they ask you whether the device was percutaneous or cut down or whatever. But if it's already RVAD is already in, then how are you going to answer? People need to be not confused about that. That what are they going to use? Was it in the same? I mean, are they going to use the date when the LVAD was? RVAD was implanted in the OR or what? So this needs
No.
to be clarified because a lot of people are going to be confused about it.
Right. So Neelam's question is, the patient gets an RVAD with an oxygenator in the OR. So on your implant form, you would add your LVAD, and under concomitant, you would select that there was ECMO, and then you put in, the details, VV, VA, ECMO. And then once the oxygenator is turned off, that's when they want the RVAD to be added into the database. So you would use the details from that time that it was added, but the percutaneous approach, yeah, I mean, technically it comes from 2 days before when the patient, was in the OR having it put in, but that's when it's added. So I hope that helps. And this was all put together and rolled out by, Dr. Picani, Dr. Kirklin, because the way we were handling it before, for those of you that were entering data prior to this, it was inaccurate. We were, every time the oxygenator was turned on, we had you explant the VAD. And then when the oxygenator was turned off, you would go through another implant, and then the oxygenator is turned on, and then you'd go through another explant. So it was really, the patients were looking like they were having more devices than they were. And so this is the solution that we all came up with to handle that. So, All right, Tasha. Hey, Tasha. Sorry to be that person, just trying to wrap my head around it all. If both scenario 1 and scenario 3 are LVAD and RVAD implant on HM3 implant, why are they both BIVAD entries? No. So scenario 3 is not a BIVAD because the device is attached to an oxygenator. Scenario 1 is a BIVAD because in the OR, it was not connected to an oxygenator. The oxygenator was attached later on. Whereas in scenario 3, the oxygenator was attached to the RVAD. Does that make sense?
On day 3, does that RVAD then become an RVAD because it stops being an oxygenator? Because it's like it's not an ECMO device.
Yes.
So
yes,
a new
let's kinda look at
implant
that.
form would be created for the RVAD, and it would be created on the day that it's decannulated on day 6.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Tally, hi. Sorry, did I miss something? Why would we not document scenario 3 as a BIVAD? So it can only be ECMO or RVAD. So it's ECMO because it's attached to the oxygenator. That's why it's not an RVAD. Okay, let me go back to scenario 1.
There will be a quiz at the end of this, right, Patricia?
Yes, there's a test. Let's go back to scenario 1. Okay, scenario 1. Patient receives a BIVAD in the OR. So one OR visit, they had, we'll call it HeartMate 3 and a Centramag put in. Following implant, the RVAD was connected to an oxygenator for 5 days. So at that time, right now, your patient, you'll see they have the implant form completed with LVAD plus RVAD, BIVAD. So now the oxygenator is attached to our Centramag. So what do? We don't need to do anything because it was already functioning as an RVAD. The oxygenator was then turned off and the RVAD was decannulated. So you would complete the explant form and select device type RVAD to explant the RVAD, and then your HeartMate 3 will be left in. Yes, I agree. So I think there should be future presentation on the differences between RVAD and ECMO. There are many non-clinical data people that this is highly technical clinical even for, I agree, for clinical staff. So yes, so we do have that coming. At AQO, go back to our agenda, we do have the coding of temporary devices, RVAD, ECMO, and balloon pump. And that will be done by a cardiologist to talk to us about the differences of these devices, how they're used, how to recognize them, in physician notes, operative notes. And then we do have some case scenarios that it's going to be done by one of our very experienced data coordinators to go through exactly like I just did, some scenarios that you all will see and how does that apply to Intermacs. So that is all to come at AQO. And we did do a webinar, trying to think, it must have been last year where a cardiologist came and did do one of these talks. So I can go back and look at that webinar, and I can, on August 27th, when we meet again, I can reference that webinar because that was to talk about different types of ECMO, VA ECMO, VV ECMO, and what kind of temporary devices we might be seeing out there in the field. So thank you. I agree with all of that. Can someone shed light on where they find oxygenator presence info in Epic to determine ECMO versus true RVAD? I would love for somebody that, you know, is really familiar with Epic to take this question where you're seeing it. I feel like on the Epic flow sheets, if you look at this sweep, that can often tell you if the patient is on oxygen or on, you know, 21% room air. But those of you out there looking at Epic, I'd love for someone to chime in.
If you want to chime in, you can raise your hand if you want, and we can take you off mute.
Oh, Sylvia, thank you for joining. Do you want us to take you off mute? Would it be easier to explain?
Yeah, I will have to go look in Epic, and what I'll do is I'll take a sample and type it out. Not everybody's Epic is going to look the same. I also abstract with another oh gosh, I can't think of it right now. And it the VAD coordinator had to show me where it is. But yes, you will see that there is oxygenation going through for that VV ECMO, and that will definitely help clarify when that oxygenator is going on and off. Because beforehand I was using the documentation, and the nurse would document one thing, the doctor would do something else, and so when I go to the VAD coordinator, they said, let me show you where you can find it in the chart. So let me pull some charts and take some sample, and I'll have it for AQO.
Thank you, Sylvia. Michelle, where would we look in the EMR for ECMO related to the RVAD, not Epic? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Like if the EMR is not Epic.
Oh.
I mean, I think with
Okay, got
the
it.
rollout to these EMRs being customized to different systems, this may be hard to give like a generalized answer for any of it.
Let me take a look and
Oh,
talk
like,
to a couple of people, and let me see if I can get examples from other institutions
okay.
to kind of help everybody with this. And if not, if you communicate with your perfusionist or your VAD coordinators or whoever rounds and has to put in the information, they usually have a good idea of where it goes.
I feel like that information might be in the nursing flow sheet, the ICU flow sheet.
That's what I was thinking, Nancy, like one of the flow sheets where I was thinking sweep for some reason, if they're on room air or oxygen. I could be wrong. Hi, Barb. May need to reach out to the Epic team to develop a flow sheet if one has not been developed already. Yeah, I talked to your team. And like Sylvia said, talk to the perfusion team, and I'm sure they can show you where it's documented. Is it possible to put a link for that previous ECMO examples webinar within the next STS database webinars, this email, for those of us that aren't on this Zoom? Yes, so these slides will all be available. And then I showed you on the Kirklin Solutions where all of these examples came from that RVAD changes that's under Appendix S. And all of this will be available. Perfusion notes might be best if not easily found, yeah. So with all of this said, I know it's confusing, you know, handling these devices and understanding when the oxygenator is on and when the oxygenator is off. So if you're ever confused, reach out to Nancy, reach out to myself, and we'll help walk you through it.
Can I make a suggestion? I'm putting my slides together for this presentation. If you have specific questions, can you send them to either Patricia or Nancy, and then they can forward them to me so I can know what to put in this presentation? What would make your job easier to code this information correctly?
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Sylvia.
Yes, thanks, Sylvia. That's a great idea.
Any other questions from anybody about AQO, temporary devices? Okay, so I don't see anything else. As always, send your questions to Nancy or myself. Our contact information is here. If you think of something after this call or in the future, feel free to reach out at any time. And if you have any questions or any suggestions that you would like to see for Sylvia's talk for temporary devices, we'll make sure she gets those and includes them in the AQO content. Okay, Christine, I have a question about warfarin data capture. Is there a way to have start dates carry over? No. I hate to say that, but we have been very deliberate to not have really any fields carry over from form to form, just, for fear that it will just get carried over and not be addressed. The only thing currently that carries over from form to form is address, and that's it. We've talked about comorbidities carrying over, and it's not something that the physicians want to do at this time. So not right now, Christine, but it's a really good question and people ask it all the time. COVID carries over. I'm trying to think of what about the COVID questions carries over, because as far as I know, it's just address.
Yeah, the COVID questions are all hidden under a parent question, so they don't have to be answered if it's not relevant. But I don't remember that carrying over.
Yeah. I think Sylvia put a question in the chat about 90-day mortality. Oh, what Sylvia's asking, when are the 90-day mortalities reports going to go live? Brandon, do you want to chime in on this one? I'm not quite sure what the rollout plan is for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I'd have to look into that further. I mean, 90-day mortality is accessible on the dashboard currently, where you can view 90-day outcomes over the last 4 quarters. And then also within the Kaplan-Meier tool, you can look at long-term mortality and as well and see at least mortality trends over follow-up time. But I can look into that specifically for the reports.
Oh, Sylvia, are you talking about the risk modeling?
That too.
That too. Okay, risk modeling.
Yeah, we're still in the process of developing and validating. You know, we're in the process of writing another paper to do an additional validation with the model. As far as from rollout of using the risk model for within centers, I have to leave that to Dr. Pagani and then let him comment on that in the future.
Yeah, this is something that the workforce is currently working on. So more to come.
Oh, okay. Here we go, John. On the follow-up status, on follow-up, since the last follow-up, has the patient tested positive for COVID-19? No is already checked, so it defaults to no.
Yeah, that's like how those concerns and contraindications would pre-check no instead of leaving it all blank.
Got it. Okay. But it doesn't bring forward a COVID date or anything. It's just defaults to no. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining. If anybody has any questions after this call or has questions about registering for AQO, just a reminder, it's the early bird pricing is good through tomorrow night. And we'll meet again in August. So thank you everybody for joining today. I hope everyone found this useful and have a great rest of your afternoon.